Joining us now is Dr. Dobri Kiprov. It's a real pleasure and honor to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
You are involved in a very promising project which is addressing the diseases of aging. And joining us actually from South Florida is someone very interested in that research and funding it a lot. Bill, can you hear us there?
I can hear you perfect, and this research is absolutely game-changing as far as its potential.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your research, sir.
My mother was a pediatrician, and in the middle of last century, she developed a prophylactic program which saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of kids with rheumatic fever. And I'm now in the process of developing a prophylactic program that hopefully will promote healthy aging and possibly prolong the lives of some people.
You're so involved with immunology. Share with our audience what specifically you're working on.
We're working on a model that has been derived from experiments in animals, experiments in mice. The experiments in mice relied on an experimental model called parabiosis. Parabiosis involves the connection of the circulations of two animals, two mice. And what happens is that the blood of the two mice becomes one. There is a mixture of the blood. So the two animals share the good and the bad parts of the blood of the other animal.
What is the process that is required in order to effectively utilize the blood of a young animal in this case?
Well, during these experiments, what the researchers observed was that if you connect a young mouse to an old mouse, and they share their circulation, they share their blood, the younger mouse becomes older, and the older mouse becomes younger. Subsequent research showed that there are what we call inhibitory factors that promote aging, and there are other factors that actually promote youth. What the researchers assumed, and then it was proven through experimental models, is that the milieu, the environment where the cells live, is actually very important for the function of any cell in the body. And this environment, this milieu, is provided by plasma. It's the fluid portion of the blood. So what I have developed is a hypothesis where we can utilize the knowledge we have gained from this model and put it to work in humans. Obviously, we cannot recreate that, and we have learned and we can extrapolate some of the findings and making it possible in humans instead of joining the circulations of two humans, which is impossible to do. We use a process called plasma exchange, or for many people it's known as plasmapheresis. Plasmapheresis is a medical procedure which is FDA approved for a variety of different diseases. It utilizes a highly sophisticated machine which is capable of removing whole blood from a person and dividing it into each individual component. It is also capable of removing any component of the blood and then replacing it with whatever physiologic solution we want, or real blood. So basically this can be very much similar to parabiosis in humans. Instead of using another human being, we're using a machine.
Fascinating. Bill, you supported research in this particular area. Please join us on this.
Well, the Life Extension Foundation has been looking at parabiosis research for several decades. It goes back quite a few years, by the way, where it probably peaked as far as the research around 1973, where they were consistently achieving systemic age reversal when they would suture a young mouse, let's say, onto an older mouse, and that blood exchange would continuously occur. The older mouse would grow younger systemically. Virtually every tissue, organ system in the body was growing younger. And interestingly enough, the younger animal that was getting the older blood mixed in with it, its aging process was accelerated. So there's no question that there are factors in young blood that enable young people, animals, to function and behave in a youthful, energetic, vibrant manner. And there's factors in older blood we'd like to maybe reduce. So the idea of experimenting with aging humans now with young blood constituents is fascinating.
Dr. Kiprov, how do you see the future?
Potentially, yes. I think that we have a major crisis in healthcare because of tremendous growth of aging population. And the aging population is basically all of them, or almost all of them, are sick. 82% of older people in the United States, and probably more around the world, suffer from some sort of a chronic disease. And the majority of these chronic diseases are inflammatory chronic diseases, pretty much associated with aging. Older people suffer more from infections, autoimmune diseases, cancer, heart disease, stroke, and so forth. We all know that, it's well documented. A couple of years ago, the World Health Organization issued a statement that unless something is being done of improving the health of older people, we will face a tremendous healthcare crisis. In the United States alone, we spend more than $3 trillion per year for healthcare, and most of it is for older people. So we do have the potential to change the paradigm of medicine and healthcare if we're successful in proving the concept that we just discussed. We have some evidence from our experience of the last 25, 30 years using plasma exchange in a variety of autoimmune diseases and malignant diseases that we can remove the same inhibitory factors that are present in the circulation of older people. We know that we can remove them, and we know that their removal affect the cells, the immune cells that are present in the blood. So by changing the milieu, by changing the environment where cells live and function, we can improve their status. The question that a lot of people are interested in is what are the stimulatory factors in young blood? At this point, nobody knows. There have been several attempts to identify those, and they have all failed. So at this point, we really don't know what these factors are. There are attempts to find the so-called magic bullet. This probably is not going to happen anytime soon because the human body is very complex. It's highly unlikely that a single molecule or single protein, a single drug will change the aging process. So we have embarked on a more general approach where we are going to remove the inhibitory factors, and we're going to provide a pharmaceutical product, which is basically 5% albumin, as well as some immunoglobulins. And I know that these are foreign words for most people, but basically this is 95% of the non-water content of plasma. So we're basically providing just about everything that plasma contains. And the age of the donors for this albumin is fairly young. So it's between 18 and 28. So it's a fairly young age. Until we find exactly what's in the plasma or what's in blood that stimulates youth, we're going to have a general approach. And this is our model for the moment.
Absolutely fascinating, groundbreaking research. Bill, what would you like to add to this?
Well, I understand that you have an experiment proposed where you may be using whole blood that's already been donated and extracting out those pro-youth factors from the blood in order to hopefully reverse many aspects of pathological aging in elderly humans. Can you describe that potential study, please?
Well, I have to disagree. Our study does not involve the use of whole blood. The use of whole blood and the use of any human blood involves blood banking practices. It becomes a logistical nightmare as well as regulatory nightmare. This is not practical at the moment. In addition to that, it carries substantial risk for adverse reactions. We see adverse reactions when we exchange plasma with what I'm suggesting, 5% albumin and IVIG, in less than 3% of all procedures. When we start using fresh frozen plasma, the side effect risk rises to over 50%. And some of the risk is fairly serious. A lot of anaphylaxis, anaphylactic shock. Some people can die. So the use of blood products, the way we know them right now, from blood banks, is really too risky, especially for the beginning of our research. We have no concrete knowledge of exactly what is going to happen. So to expose people to such danger at this moment is not acceptable to me.
Can you please describe how the research project that you plan to embark on is going to work to attempt to reverse pathological aging processes in human beings?
The plasma exchange process has been shown on numerous occasions, and it's been published to be capable of removing exactly the same substances that have been shown to cause aging, or at least to be associated with aging, both in animals as well as in humans. Almost all of those molecules and proteins are pro-inflammatory, which is very important. As I mentioned earlier, chronic inflammatory diseases are the main problem with the aging population. So we know that we can remove these molecules, and pretty much these are the inhibitors that we find in the parabiosis model. Now, again, we do not know what are exactly the substances present in the younger blood. So we are going to use not blood per se, but a blood product, which is a pharmaceutical, but it is derived from whole blood. Whole blood is divided into plasma and cells. The plasma is taken to a laboratory, and it's manipulated to be safe, so there will be no anaphylactic reactions and there will be no transmission of diseases. And it's a pharmaceutical product. You can order it from a pharmacy and use it. So we're going to use 5% albumin. We're going to supplement it with another blood product also present in plasma called intravenous immunoglobulin. And this will replace 95% of what is in the blood, and presumably contains the stimulatory factors that we're looking for.
From what we understand, you'll be starting off with plasma components from younger individuals and then taking those into the laboratory in order to create what will be beneficial to elderly humans. Can you define more in detail what your experimental clinical program will involve?
Yeah, at this point, we are not going to do exactly what you just described. We're basically going to use a pharmaceutical product which is derived from whole blood from relatively young individuals and is made safe so that there are no side effects and there is no risk of transmission of diseases. It's called albumin, and in addition, we are going to use something called immunoglobulin, which is part of the plasma as well. What you described is a project that most likely will take place later in our research. At this moment, we are approaching this subject in more general manner because there's no knowledge of what are the exact substances in the plasma.
Okay, it's very interesting. And I do understand the fact that we know that there are pro-youth factors in the blood of younger organisms, and that those factors do radically change as the organism or the person, let's say, grows older, and that person often suffers chronic, systemic, low-grade inflammation that contributes to virtually every degenerative disease. So if all that you were doing was putting out the fires of inflammation, that in of itself would be a major advance.
Yes, I fully agree with you. The inhibitory factors that we are removing, and we know those, they have been well defined, are the major contributors to chronic inflammation as you described it. The contribution of the youthful factors in the blood has not been well defined yet. So we are going to experiment with something that we know is going to work. We know that we can decrease inflammation. We have shown it in many different diseases. And we can use it as a prophylactic measure towards chronic inflammatory diseases. And we're going to provide whatever it is in younger plasma to these individuals as well.
That's absolutely tremendous. I assume you'll be using all kinds of biomarkers such as C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha levels. You're looking for those which are often elevated in older people, hoping that the pro-youth factors will suppress those pro-inflammatory compounds in the blood. Are there any other biomarkers you'll be looking at?
Yes, we will be looking at those as well as many others. Some of those are proprietary. We know what we can remove, and we know what we can substitute with, and create a milieu, an environment where the cells can live a healthy life and rejuvenate. In fact, we have shown that by the procedure that I just described, the removal of the inhibitory factors and whatever we put back with the albumin actually affects the surface of the cells and makes them more viable and more efficient.
Yeah, just so, again, to educate the audience somewhat about what we're talking about, young stem cells emit exosomes and proteins and cytokines, all kinds of beneficial chemicals, so to speak, that affect surrounding cells in a favorable way. And that's a theory that a lot of scientists who have come to the Life Extension Foundation have discussed, where they feel that if they can just put in enough of these pro-youth factors, there may be a beneficial effect in the elderly. So is that a good description of what you're seeking to do?
Yes, I think that this is of course very true. What is paid less attention to in many circles is the fact that the inhibitory factors actually may be more damaging than the youthful factors being beneficial. And this has been recently shown to be the case. By just removing the bad stuff, you can influence the growth of the cells. And one of the experiments that we're going to do is exactly what you described. We're going to work with stem cells that have been damaged by aging, and we're going to provide them with the new environment that we're going to create after plasma exchange and see if they're going to be more responsive and become more youthful.
What you're really saying is that you're looking to turn back on senescent stem cells in a way that they start functioning in the elderly person's body in a manner analogous to when they were younger.
We're very much hoping so, yes.
That is absolutely tremendous. That is true age reversal, something that up until a few years ago, very few people understood was possible. As it relates to immune senescence, is there a mechanism that you're going to attempt to employ that might correct that problem?
Yes, we're going to look at immunocompetent cells very carefully before and after procedures. And as you probably know, the immunosenescence is very well defined in terms of looking at molecules on the surface of immunocompetent cells. So this is done by immunofluorescence, a somewhat complicated procedure, but we're going to employ all the tools available today, and some are still proprietary, to look at that. And we have shown in a variety of diseases that we can affect the surface of the cells, which is called the phenotype of the cells. We can reverse the aging phenotype into a youthful phenotype again, just by doing plasma exchange.
Yeah, but again, the lay audience's benefit, older people, if something else does not strike them dead, they will probably die of a consequence of immune system senescence, where the beneficial properties of their immune system begin to fail them, so that an infectious disease or a malignancy can take hold in their body and often kill them. And unfortunately, they're a bad part of their immune system, the inflammatory component, it seems to rebel. It creates all kinds of vascular damage and can initiate and progress cancer. All kinds of issues related to inflammation that really need to be turned off if a person's even to maintain their mental competency. Because inflammation in the brain is just such a major problem and a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and other degenerative conditions that elderly people suffer through. So what you're proposing is absolutely revolutionary, and the fact that you're working on a project to make older people function much younger is absolutely revolutionary.
Now that you mentioned Alzheimer's disease, I would like to let the audience know that there have been both controlled and uncontrolled published studies of plasma exchange in Alzheimer's, and the patients enrolled in these studies have benefited. So there is a larger study going on right now. It's an international, both in Europe and the United States. It's FDA approved. It's double-blinded, so we don't know the results. They're trying to confirm what the earlier studies showed. But it is very promising because the initial studies confirm that plasma exchange can be beneficial in Alzheimer's disease, which will be a game changer as well.
So I'd like to ask you if you've experienced all the cooperation and support this important research should benefit from, or, for example, has the FDA cooperated with you?
We have not approached the FDA. We have applied for several grants, primarily here in California. We have not approached the NIH because the process is fairly cumbersome and actually takes money to get everything ready for an NIH proposal. And the chances of financing from them are slim because you compete with a lot of internal projects as well. We have a non-profit foundation that is raising money for our project at the moment.
Well, that's tremendous, because there is a critical shortage of research money emanating from the government. They do spend so much money in so many other areas. Our nonprofit Life Extension Foundation, we make numerous grants, but it's often, it becomes not enough for a scientist to do everything they'd like to do. So we urge the government, wherever possible, to prioritize biomedical research as possibly the most important function that they could involve themselves with. And you are correct, it's very difficult to get grants because there's many more scientists in need of money than what money is made available.
Right.
We are experiencing such a fascinating time in history with such advances in health and so forth. Please reflect on that. I'd like Bill to reflect on this as well, and you. This is an amazing time.
It is an amazing time. I think that the advances in science and medical technology actually as well have been astounding over the last half a century. And one of the problems with that is that all these new things are fairly expensive. So this has raised the price of medicine considerably. So if we can affect the health of the patients prior to them developing a disease and having to use this new technology and new medications and so forth, it will be a paradigm change, because the less people need this kind of care, the less money we will have to spend for healthcare. So it's very important to be able to do that, and I hope we succeed.
What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
We know that the aging population faces a healthcare cost crisis. We have developed ways to keep people alive longer, but it's expensive, and they often are on more than 10 different medications. After they reach a certain age, none of those medications are curative, but they are all typically expensive, and they require long-term use, and they keep people going, not always as healthy as they should be. So the idea of systemically reversing aging, well, that would eradicate the need for all those medications, or at least most of them, eradicate the need for these long-term hospitalizations, and delay the need to disperse money to people so that they would stay healthy for many decades longer than what they currently are. So these truly are a revolutionary findings. One question I want to ask is if there is any idea as to what the final cost of this treatment might be if indeed it receives regulatory approval and is made available on a widespread basis.
This particular procedure is approved by the FDA for a variety of diseases. I don't see the cost for what we are doing to be much different than what it is now. In the beginning, it's not going to be inexpensive because we're not going to do too many patients. We need volume to decrease the price. Another thing that may actually raise the cost a little bit is the development of better fluids, better albumin, better plasma fluids that, as we learn what are the beneficial factors in younger blood, we can incorporate in the existing pharmaceutical products. But ultimately, it will be pretty much the cost of what is being charged for current plasma exchange procedure. So it varies from an institution to institution. It depends on Medicare coverage and so forth. So I'm not going to mention an exact dollar amount, but it's considerably less expensive than any of the monoclonal antibodies that are being used today, and any of the cancer treatments and the long-term treatments for chronic inflammatory diseases.
Well, it's certainly encouraging to know that this could be used on a widespread basis, and the affordability factor would be in favor of the patient. That's such a huge problem right now. A new drug gets approved, and it's so costly that it's literally bankrupting insurance companies, and we don't know how the Medicare system is going to be able to sustain itself. What medical procedures are currently using plasma exchange pheresis?
The medical conditions, you mean?
Yes, yeah. What conditions today are using something similar to what you're doing?
Plasma exchange is used in more than 50 different medical conditions. Most of them are fairly rare, so people haven't heard of them for the most part. However, many of them are deadly. Unless plasma exchange is instituted and the physicians intervene on time, patients may become either disabled or die. So it is a life-saving procedure for a variety of diseases. Many of these diseases are autoimmune diseases. They are based on impairment of the immune system, not much different than the impairment of the immune system in the elderly. We use plasma exchange and related procedures in the new medicine, if you will, with cell therapies and so forth, where we collect not plasma, but different cells, predominantly stem cells, dendritic cells, to make cancer vaccines, antiviral vaccines, to treat malignancies and so forth. So it is a very well-established procedure, and I think that the beauty of what we're proposing is we're using a procedure that is well-established and has proven to be helpful in a variety of different diseases. It is FDA approved, is relatively inexpensive, and we can use it as a prophylaxis for prevention of a tremendous healthcare problem that we're facing here in the United States and the world is facing as well.
What's fascinating about what you're proposing is that Medicare theoretically could almost mandate that once people reach a certain age, they undergo this procedure in order to spare Medicare the outrageous medical costs that it will have to bear if it just allows that person to degenerate naturally.
Yes.
And we know the last year of a typical Medicare patient's life, the government may wind up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, mostly on hospital care. And all that's going to happen is the patient lingers on. With what you're proposing, that need to be hospitalized could be postponed for a very long time. And if technology continues to evolve like our Life Extension Foundation is pursuing, well, the person may never need that extensive hospital stay to try to ward off an immune senescence-related medical condition. So this is absolutely a breakthrough technology that's being described right now.
The potential beneficial impact of this procedure financially on the healthcare system can be tremendous. We're talking a paradigm shift. We are talking about changing the habits of physicians and other healthcare professionals of how they take care of their patients. It will be a disruption of the current process. And it can have a tremendous effect on the global economy and obviously on the longevity of the people, but also providing them with a healthier life. There are a lot of people today that are at a certain age and they're being kept alive because we can keep them alive, but they have a horrible life. They're sick, they're in bed, they cannot walk. I think that improving the health status of aging people is probably my main goal.
I think the concept of not only having an effect on the world's economy and the costs of healthcare, but quality of life and families being torn apart by the spectacle of a loved one declining. So there's a moral matter aspect of this, and of course the economic as well.
Absolutely.
Well, if you look at turning points in history, there was a time where the manufacture of clothing was so expensive that only wealthy people could afford to have even the minimal of nice clothes to wear. And now, of course, clothing has become very inexpensive. But this could be one of those turning points where everybody who reaches a certain age can expect to enjoy good health by virtue of a single treatment. We at Life Extension certainly concur with the notion of a turning point in medical history where something that was very expensive in the past, which at this stage is the caring for elderly people. It's so costly that the system can't afford it and the people don't enjoy being treated with mediocre medication. The idea of being able to take a person at a certain age and reverse certain aspects of that process, this would be an incredible benefit to humanity.
And the beauty is that, again, we're using a well-established procedure that we know very well how to perform, and we can just apply it for a new cause, for a new problem, and save a lot of money, a lot of lives, and prolong life.
So do we have a timetable when this clinical study might be able to initiate?
Yes, we are hoping to start this summer, provided that we raise enough money to start the project, not for the entire project, but just to start. So I'm very hopeful that we can do that and start by early summer.
That would be absolutely tremendous. How many people do you expect to enroll in the initial study?
10.
Okay. And we very much would look forward to hearing of those results.
Yeah, we hope to have some results by the end of the year if things go well.
Well, I want to compliment you on your foresightedness and your ability to see what's been going on for really over 40 to 50 years. A lot of people are going to think this is brand new as far as the concept, but what's been going on for a very long time is that young blood has been shown to rejuvenate older animals, and we of course cannot do that in humans. We know all kinds of reasons why, but what you're doing, specifically taking components that are going to become pro-youth factors, I'm saying that in a generic way of course, but something that's going to be used in an elderly person to affect a systemic rejuvenation is somewhat unprecedented. And it's something that the country and the world is very much in need of.
Thank you.
So before we conclude, tell us of your plans for the future.
I'm looking forward to this project very, very much. I think, as we discussed today, it is very, very important. I'm also working on a variety of research protocols at the moment, utilizing stem cells and other immunocompetent cells for the treatment of a variety of diseases. I think that cell therapies will be the future of medicine. They're proving themselves very successful in a variety of different fields, including oncology, cancers, viral diseases, autoimmune diseases, and so forth. So I'm involved in a variety of projects related to that research as well.
Bill?
Okay, the Life Extension Foundation, we were founded back in 1977, and some of the reasons that we founded our organization were incredibly successful parabiosis studies that were being done in the animal model back in the early 1970s. And it's regrettable that a lot of researchers have literally dropped the ball and have forgotten about something that was working in the experimental model. So I just want to compliment the physician scientists that we're talking to who understand the value of this kind of technology, because it truly is a way of taking older people and perhaps making them much younger on a biological basis. And that is an unprecedented achievement. So we again want to compliment the researchers that are putting this project together and give our support wherever possible.
I wish you enormous success with this very, very important work you're doing, sir.
Thank you very much.